Hello. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Andrew. I'm one of the two co-founders of the Chroma Golem Game Studio. I do game development streams every Tuesday, and I just realized our stream is titled wrong in the wrong category. Let me fix that. 1 second. I streamed Superliminal 2 days ago, or 3 days ago. It was a pretty fun game. We beat it on stream. It was just like 2 or 3 hours, I think. Alright, stream should be the right title now. Let's double check that. Alright, we're cool. But yeah, welcome back. We are going to keep working on Elixir Emporium this week. People seem to like it a lot. We've got lots and lots of people trying it out, and I just put out a new version on itch.io. So let's go over to this scene. Awesome, no echo. That's good to hear. I always want to double check. Thank you. Let me bring back all these nice decor pieces on the stream. Let's see here. Let's put the demo back up. Hello. Hey, Jet. Thanks for tuning in. I feel like I always want to check in on Mastodon more, and it feels very much like a void, but occasionally I see people on it, and I'm like, hey, you're a cool guy, and we chat for a long time, so it's good to have you here. Let's see. We will jump in momentarily. Think everything is good to go. And yeah, I think maybe we'll start out by just playing a little bit of what we've built so far so everyone can see where we're at. This actually is pretty similar to the game that you can play in your browser right now. If you head on over to chromagolem.itch.io, Elixir Emporium is what we're working on. Basically, you play as a little traveling alchemist, and you have the ability to combine items into other items. So we've got a bunch of items in the game from the start, a bunch of recipes in the game from the start, but once you progress through that kind of web or network of items, you, in most games, would start hitting a wall of like, okay, there's nothing left to craft. In this game, we have a lot of AI engine stuff in the back end that'll let you combine items. Even if there are no recipes, we kind of ask an AI like, hey, what would these items combine into? We've got a lot of randomly created NPCs, so we generate personalities for them and locations and everything. There's traveling, and so from that, we also use AI to give them problems that they might be having in the world. So they give you these quests, and you can basically go craft items that you think would help them. You give them the item. We then turn to that AI again and say, here's the quest, here's the item. Does it solve the quest? So it's kind of if you've ever played like Little Alchemy, that kind of game where you craft items, but now we've got these more RPG elements where you can have these hopefully repeatable quests or quest lines with these NPCs where you can be building up a friendship and kind of solving bigger and bigger problems overall. We will start playing, and the longer quest lines we're going to get to in this stream, I think. We're going to be rebuilding how all the conversation data structures are stored, because right now it's not stored very well. We basically it started out with just giving NPCs a problem, and we just last week got to being able to solve those problems for people and then have them come back with new problems. But it doesn't take into account like the previous problems they've had or whether you were helpful to them as a player. So we're going to use some AI stuff and summarize the previous problem and whether you were helpful or not, and then pipe that through in a chain to a new problem generation. So if you solved their previous problem by giving them like a bottle of invisibility, like they're trying to collect items in the fields and there are too many monsters, and you could give them a lot of different things. You could give them armor, weapons, whatever. If you choose to give them an invisibility potion so they can collect stuff without monsters seeing them, maybe their next problem is like, hey, now I am invisible all the time and I can't talk to my friends. Can you get me something else? So we'll play around a lot with prompts and stuff to try and get the like sense of scale and stakes to increase with each quest, but we also want to make sure that we're incorporating the results of the previous quests and things with the next quest, basically. So we start in a hard-coded town here called Gerund, and it is perched beneath a rumbling volcano. The village enders with fields scorched and river dry, while markets hum with a resilience aware the fiery end of the town could come at any moment. So we generate a bunch of NPCs in this town. They're static. Later you can travel to other towns and you can come back and you'll find these same NPCs with different problems and stuff. But we've got a blacksmith, a merchant, a weaver, a volcanologist, herbalist, water carrier. It goes on and on. So we've got Andrew the Potter here. I think he naturally is a fun guy to start with, since both of our founders of this game studio are named Andrew. But basically you click on him, you get a little prompt. You can always go back and check out what other problems people have if you don't necessarily have the items for these guys. Last week we worked a little bit on the new player scaling. So these early prompts are going to be a little easier. They'll probably be more specific in what they want and be looking for more items that are close to the items you already have, instead of needing you to craft a longer chain of items. And they should have a shorter description, but boy, Andrew likes to talk. Alright, he is a humble potter. The proximity to the volcano has coated his crafting area with a thick layer of volcanic ash, making his clay brittle. For pottery, this is a disaster. We need pure clay. If only I had a way to purify my materials or protect them from this invasive ash. So obviously there's a couple different approaches we could take there, of like, maybe we can craft him a potion that can purify things. Maybe we do moss and mud, we see what we get there. We get a healing mud pack. That was pretty slow. I wonder if we'll check OpenAI status later. But we could also go the route of like getting him a cover or something to shield his area from that ash. But I like the idea of purifying it, so maybe let's add the crystal to the healing mud pack. We see what we get. I wonder... Okay, we got radiant healing gel. Maybe we put that more in like a potion form for him. And I guess we can check. There's also the shop. You can buy some items that refresh their stock every time you help someone, or every time you travel to a new location. There's also forageables, which is kind of a placeholder right now. I mean, you can get all the stuff, obviously. But actually, I guess I can show this right now. Before we give this guy his potion of radiant regeneration, which is probably not going to help, but I'll say all of this here is more of a like menu simulator for a town. The next step of this game, after we get this more intelligent conversation system working, is to drop it into a 3D world where you can go around and forage as many items as you want, cut down trees, get logs, craft those logs into other things, craft bottles, go get water. Like all this stuff that you can get for free in the foraging menu right now. It's just kind of a placeholder for when we have this more open world RPG system. So it's pretty bare bones right now, but that's kind of the flow we're going for. Is we want to be able to I'll grab all these. We want to be able to craft stuff and have enough items in this sort of menu simulator, so it's fun and we can do all the crafting, but eventually we want to let players just go ham and get as many items as they want and come back for like a really long crafting session. Or maybe they want to play more of, they talk to this guy and they're like, ooh, he really needs this thing. I can check my recipes that I've generated, and maybe he really wants, I think healing mud pack will be good for him, so I will go out in the world and collect some mud and some moss and then craft that for him, give it to him. But let's go ahead and give him that item. Let's see if it helps. There's 2 states that NPCs can shift into when we give them an item, a helpful state or a not helpful state. And this one didn't quite address his problem, so he tipped us 1 item and gave us tipped us 1 gold, gave us a few items as a reward, which it's a little hard to see when we don't have like little pop-ups for what item you got, but that'll come in the new UI we're going to work on maybe next week. But if we were to help him, he would have a heart that we would have built up here. Now we can talk to him again. This is kind of the problem that we're going to fix this week, where we've already helped this guy once. He doesn't need to reintroduce himself. He should have a new problem, which he does, but it should be more based on either if you weren't able to help him last time, the problem should get worse, or if you were able to help him last time, he should have a new problem based more loosely around like the solution that he took on the previous problem. So let's see if we have anything that can help him here. I think he just wants water, just to wet his clay. The river's dried up. Let's just give him some water. We've got some difficulty adjustments on the back end, so if you're not getting things correct, oh man. Alright, then it gives easier and easier prompts, but apparently we are not good at this game. So he did not want water. He needs more of a solution for water, or like a long-term solution, I guess. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Now he comes back with a new problem again. He introduces himself again. Let's look at just like someone else real fast. We got our volcanologist. Frequent eruptions have made the soil barren. He also needs a substance that can purify ash. Like, they're all going to be the intersection of their job and their location, basically. So we will tweak the variants and stuff like that a little bit later. We've been mostly working on just the system, being able to combine items. Spider, silk, and stick. What do you get? I don't know. A silk-bound staff. That's pretty cool. So you can kind of build up these items. If you wanted to play more of like a merchant route, you can go collect those free items. Maybe we got time and a pebble. Let's combine those that were both 0 cost items because we foraged them. We could break things, I guess. Durability of unbreakable, not an integer. Alright, we will fix that another time. But what the point there was, if you wanted, you can go ahead and craft items from all the free stuff you can forage, and then you can go to the store and sell stuff that way. And once you have enough gold, you can obviously travel to other places. All these are generated as well, so we have some AI prompts that say, here's the current location, here's the neighboring places the player has already generated, and it basically puts together, here's some other places that are in the vicinity near them. So you can travel over to the Cragtop Citadel. It generates a description for that, it generates NPCs that now live there, and you can come back there anytime, and so on. So that's kind of the gist of things. And things are a bit slow right now, I think, especially with the the item generation, because we have so many prompts going on in the background generating details about all these NPCs. But I think when we move over to this sort of world, we'll be able to define a radius for each NPC where we can start generating all that stuff as soon as the player enters that radius. And then we can get more of a lazy generation approach of only generating stuff when we need it, and keep that kind of background thread empty so we can do more things on demand of combining items and happening more instantly instead of joining a queue of generations. But that's basically where we're at right now. We've got just one scene. It's our town simulator. We've got NPCs, jobs, problems, quests, and so on. So I think we'll just go ahead, and there's going to be a lot of just ripping out code, and I'm excited to get into it. So let me double check that everything's looking good on the stream. Looks good. We are going to go in and take a look at how we are currently storing our NPC problems and rip it all out and write something better. So we've got our stranger manager that deals with it. And I believe if we kind of step through our generation process, we have got a method for generating a quest for a person. It determines which prompt to use based on some game state stuff. If you don't have a lot of items in your inventory, you get an easier one. And if you are still at the beginning, like the first round of generations, you get an easier one. Then we can fill out that prompt with our game state information, trigger the generation, wait for it to be done, and then when it is completed, we go ahead and set the problem text on the person. So there's an immediate problem there because now we only ever have the current problem of the person. We have no concept of like a conversation history. We have no summaries of what previously happened. Even when we give them an item and we generate a response from them to like display to the player of saying, hey, thanks, but this doesn't really help, it never really gets stored anywhere. It should go in a conversation history, but they just keep their problem text and that's all we store. So really what needs to happen, we've got a person database, which we could put stuff in here, but I think actually what should happen is we probably should have like a conversation database. I'll go ahead and close this bigger project, where we can fetch the previous conversation of a person by passing in that person, or we can fetch like a summarized version of the previous conversation for a person, which might be a lot more helpful in passing through to those AI prompts so we're not filling out the context window indefinitely or infinitely. So what we will go ahead and do, let's head on over to our start screen where we set up some of these databases. And let's build a conversation database, which this should hopefully be empty. Yeah, okay. I was a little worried that I had already done this and forgot about it. But no, I just mocked it out. So what's going to happen here is I think we'll want a dictionary of person to conversation. Let's say conversation history. Let's initialize that when we start up the game, so it's always empty. We can just go ahead and add to it. We're using a dictionary so we get that instant lookup instead of having to iterate through and find the right conversation. And I think what we also want is maybe a dictionary of person as well, and We might do a conversation. Let's have that in for now, but I think we can do an abridged conversation history, and we can kind of treat these like parallel arrays or some sort of data structure. Let me make sure that abridged is the. We want the summarized version. Yeah. So basically, what'll happen is when you have this person generate a quest, they'll say a message. Well, we'll have a system message for setting up the generation. That gets used to generate a quest, which is a message sent to the player. The player will give them a item back, and will generate another message from the NPC to the player. So you've got these at least 3 messages, maybe more if we let the player talk to the NPC and ask questions and stuff. But that is all for a single quest, and that'll all live in this conversation, the full conversation history. But once the quest is complete, what we'll want to do is say, give me all the messages for this quest, and use AI to summarize them into a single message. So in the abridged conversation history, we can store the NPC tasked the player with finding a solution to collecting items from the fields with so many monsters around. The player gave them this item, and it was helpful for this reason, and the NPC was happy. Something really simple like that, which summarizes all of those individual messages and can be used for the next prompt of, that can be the context we pass in. Now when we're generating a problem for this person, we can look at that and say, okay, well that was all the relevant bits that we really needed from this longer history. We can save on a lot of tokens. We can make sure our context window stays really small and fully optimized. And yeah, I think it's a lot easier to just do this conversation history and maybe add this in as an optimization later. But I think maybe we'll start by trying to put it in originally, and it might be a little easier to add this from the start. It's just easier to only have this overall. But we'll give it a shot. So what we're going to do is initialize both of those. Let's go ahead and when we first create our person, we want to think about what sort of messages we want to set up from the start in the conversation history. So the person's probably going to have, I guess we don't need a description or anything like that from the start. So the flow basically is you start the game, the location database is now creating a location, so it's giving it a name, a description, it's creating people within that. Each of those people are then queuing off AI generations for their own quest or prompt that is based on their profession within this location. And I guess that's probably where we want to just have our first message stored. So if we look at our stranger manager and say, here's our entry point where we were previously storing the problem text. We can go ahead and, instead of storing it here, we'll add it to this conversation database. But I'm wondering if maybe before all this, we want to give the person more of a introduction of, like, the first time you talk to them in a game, they introduce themselves and say, hi, I'm Bob. I'm the blacksmith here in town. And then we could have some sort of like message queue where that is their message the first time you talk to them, and that can be pre-generated. And we can also pre-generate their next message of like introducing their quest. I think separating out the introduction and the quest message might be a good idea, because it'll probably be, it's what we're going to do for all the future quests as well. So maybe let's go ahead and build some prompts. that we can use. But this is where we're going to start storing the quests that they generate. But I think before we get to that, let's generate a introduction. So we've got a prompt object a scriptable object we've been using for all of this. We're working at Chroma Golem of adding this prompt object and a few other helpful API things to a Unity asset that we can share with you guys soon. Also of note, this uses our Chroma Golem API, which I definitely recommend. You can check that out over at not the admin page, api.chromagolem.com. Head on over there. It's very, very basic. It's just text generation right now. It's just using your choice of 3.5 turbo or 4 turbo. This is actually cheaper than doing it through OpenAI. Wink, wink. But you can head on over. You can create games. All my API keys should be truncated here, but you get some good stats. You can check over and see like your breakdown of which models you're using. See some player stats. It's all anonymized, but at least you can see like whoever this guy is really playing a decent amount. This is probably me. But yeah, you can switch between models really easily without having to redeploy and resubmit to Steam and so on. And you can check out documentation there as well. Cool. But let's go ahead and say generate introduction for NPC. Say introduction message. And let's just write this. And I hope you can hear my keyboard so it's nice ASMR while I type, but I type so much more coherent when I'm not reading what I'm typing as I type it, so please bear with me. Keyboard is nice. Heck yeah. You can be friendly or not. Let's see here. You will also be given like a dome keyboard. It's I actually can't remember what kind of switches I have. It's definitely a mechanical keyboard. I think it's red switches maybe. But my microphone is a directional microphone and it's pointed the opposite direction. Let me do this while I type. Nice. Heck yeah. Maybe I should set up a second mic that points directly at my keyboard and just pipe that in as well. Need some rainy mood as well. Actually, it was so nice when I was working on one of our other demos. Shout out to the one that we spent a month on, You Are Not Alice, which has rain sounds in the background and also keyboard sounds while typing in the game. Would recommend also over at chromagolem.itch.io. But let's see here. Let's say name Bob, profession blacksmith, location Gerund Village, and location description. Well, actually, let's just steal our description that we have. I've rewritten this so many times. We will probably rewrite it again. but we're moving more in the direction of hard coding in the starting location and then generating outward from there, because it gives a nice like seed of quality and tone for generating everything else. So if we just give this information, and we use GPT-4 Turbo for this, well, let's see like what the typical response might be for this NPC introducing themselves. Welcome to Jaren. They call me Bob, the village blacksmith. He found us beneath the watchful eye of our tempestuous volcano. It's a hard life here. Fields are scorched and our rivers as dry as forged coals at dawn. Alright, that's way too long. So let's say, please write one sentence at most and don't re-describe the location description. Don't re-describe the location, because the player already sees that in a little blurb. Let's generate a response for that. Hail, traveler, I'm Bob, the blacksmith of Jaren, shaping steel with the same fire that both threatens and defines our village. That's way cooler, way shorter, doesn't set up any sort of problem, but it does kind of lead into a natural quest from there. So if we were to make him maybe a fisherman, what would that response be? We just want to check a couple and see if it's like good enough to start with. Ahoy, I'm Bob, the fisherman who's learned to catch a line, even in the driest riverbeds. Fancy trying your hand at it. Yeah, it's good enough. And chef, maybe? I'm Bob, chef of the last standing kitchen in Jaren, where even the threat of lava won't stop us from serving the hottest meals. Perfect. I like it. So we'll use that for generating a first message. And we probably want some sort of like state management. If we're pre-generating multiple messages at a time for our conversation database, what's going to happen is we're going to have our introductory message and our quest message generated before the player can even like talk to this NPC for the first time. And we could just go from this to the next. I mean, maybe that's what we should do. But alternatively, we could just have an index of like where in the message history has the player already seen. And then if they talk to this NPC, we see they haven't seen this yet, so we put this marker here, and then the next time they talk to the NPC, we see that they've already seen this message, so they just go down the line. And if we ever get to a point where the marker is at the end, we can go ahead and generate another message. I mean, it's such a small thing. We'll just go ahead and queue into the next. If there's any unread messages, I mean, I guess that also needs some sort of pointer to know like we're here, and just goes into the next one. So we'll bake that into our conversation database with the player. So in our conversation, maybe we have a public index of a message last seen by player. And we'll do a little bit of fiddling with that, because some messages, like system messages, we don't want to show to the player. But I think when we trigger, when we have like a public chat message, get next message to display for person, we can use that and say, all right, we're at this point in the message history, let's grab the next one. If it's a system message, we just increment and try again, and so on. So let's also stub out add message or add queued message for conversation. And there we can take a Let's do the internals of the chat message. We can say a role and a message, and we'll come back to that. But what we want to do here is generate our introduction message. So I'm trying to think through, like, both in our current system and where we're going to, where we'll have better UI around messages and you can click to the next one. Right now you can't really do that, so maybe I'll just add a button real quick to let you do that. But we want to make sure that this new system works best for our next system, but works for now. So the point that we want to start generating an introduction message is probably where we are creating those people. So here, this is our prompt that generates professions that would make sense at the current location. So when we get those professions, we go through each one and create a random person. So I think here is where we want to say conversation database, or let's put a public prompt NPC introduction message. And then here we can go ahead and say well, the problem is that stranger manager doesn't get initialized until we get to town. So let's actually put that on our conversation database, which we know exists from the get-go. And then we'll use that and generate a message, add it to the conversation database. Generate a introductory message for this person. And we can say and the tokens that we want to use are NPC name, NPC profession, location name, location type, and location description. So we just populate these directly into the prompt from the code here, and then that this is going to be a bad example, but it'll use the tokens instead. Yeah, that doesn't work because we're not populating it in with anything. But that's basically the system we'll use here. So NPC name, NPC profession, we got location name, location type, and location description. Cool. And we still need to rework like our location system a little bit because everything's based on current location. We can't specify like when we're generating NPCs for another town. Just the way we're storing data makes it a little wonky to pass in another town. But we'll get to that later. We've got this prompt now built in. We can go ahead and start a coroutine to run it in a background thread. We will generate this method. Let's just put it directly below. So when the prompt has run, we can, I think actually, what's my signature? String Can't remember how we're passing around the extra parameter here. I'll go look for that. But basically the flow is we'll generate this introduction and we go ahead and just say conversation database dot add queued message. Let's put this guy over here. Add queued message for conversation with, I guess we do need to pass in who that conversation is for. So we got our person. We want a assistant role, which is what we key as coming from the NPC. The user role comes from the player. So we just create that and then we'll read from that when we go to show the current conversation. So here we can just say conversation history of that person, message history. Why doesn't it have a constructor? Am I blind? Is this spelled wrong? This variable exists here. Oh, it's because I have errors elsewhere, so the code hasn't recompiled, so my editor doesn't know that we've added this yet. But this should be right. We grab the conversation history for this person, just reach into the message history, add a new message to it. And we don't want to increment the index of the message last seen by the player. We'll initialize that to -1, so we know to start at index 0. But let's go ahead and let's figure out how we are passing through stuff. This, I believe, is it. Because I just started figuring out this syntax for when we want to pass in some extra parameters, since this is all basically this generation coroutine takes a callback and stuff loses, variables go out of scope when we try and pass stuff through. It's kind of a wonky way to do things that we should probably rewrite eventually, but I think what we can do is say generation message and call it as a like an anonymous function or whatever it's called. Person to string, they are backwards. And what are we missing? 1, 2, 3. So we need 3 ending parentheses. All right, so that error is gone. Now when we generate a response to this generation coroutine, the delegate that we have returns the string. We use that string in an anonymous function to call this with that string and the person from this context, which is magic, basically. So that should generate their message. Let's go ahead and just add some debug right now. We'll figure out how to show it in the UI in a little bit, but we will at least know that it's working by checking the console manually for now. So we'll see that person's name and their introductory message. We will get a ton of those because we are generating a ton of NPCs. Maybe let's go ahead and for now just, can we just do like 5? it doesn't matter. We'll do them all. I just wanted to make our debug a little bit cleaner, but it's fine. But now we have a conversation database that stores conversation for each person. We are adding an introductory message for each person. In a second, we will go also add their quest message for each person. But let's go ahead and looks like this needs to return something, which is what we need to fix our errors to get it to recompile and recognize this. So here, just get next message to display for. We'll have, we say index of this conversation is conversation history for that person. And that'll be their index of message last seen by the player. So then the next message is, we can say chroma LLM service dot chat message. Next message is this, but we just want to do a little checking to make sure we're not like going past the array. If we shouldn't ever, I mean, in an ideal state, have a conversation history where we have seen all of the messages and the player goes and tries to interact with an NPC and there's nothing to display. But depending on how, like, when we use local models for this, it might take a little longer. So I could see somebody just talking to an NPC over and over and over again and it's too fast. So we haven't generated the next message yet. So what we'll do is, in the case that it is, in the case that the index is at the end and we don't have a next message to display, we'll just display the previous message again. And whenever they have something new to say, that's when we'll display the next message. So we can say if the index is greater than the message history, then we will return the conversation history one message prior. Otherwise, we want to return the next message and increment the index of the message seen. So we'll say increment that and return conversation history of this person. I think that's right. We'll double check it. But if we go in, it's -1 and we have one message, we will increment it to 0. Shows the first message, and then the next time through it's 0, we have one message, so it'll return the same message again, 0. Okay, yeah, that's right. So what is this error? It is complaining about and refusing to compile. Oh, it's just because I've added that constructor. Alright, well, I'll just add a default constructor too. And, I mean, I could have just used that syntax, I guess, where we used the constructor wherever. But, yeah, that's fine. Okay, so conversation history. Oh, it's conversion history. Yikes. I thought I knew better than the computer, but I don't. Conversation history all around. Alright, any more errors? No. Okay. So, before we jump into also adding the quest to the conversation database, since we are just outputting the generation messages, or the introduction messages for each NPC, we're going to go ahead and just jump in, and we'll check the console and make sure that we are getting output for all these NPCs? Because I'm not sure that we are. So we added the random person here. Oh, but we never call this until we go to the location. Okay. So if we go in to town, it's generating all our items, generating blah, blah, blah. We didn't set the prefab of the prompt that we just added. So generate introduction message. Gotta set that reference. Let's try this again. So in here, generating all the items, generating locations, generating background messages. We do get an error, but we do also have some introductions, or at least one introduction. So it's probably an error in how we're adding it to the database. It's just erroring on the first one. But, a new face. I'm Theobald, the village blacksmith, forging the best from the fire, just like Gerund itself. That's such a good introduction, I think, for our location. Let's check out how we are adding this. Right, so obviously this is just an empty dictionary. We want to say if conversation history doesn't contain the key, then we want to initialize a new conversation there before trying to use that conversation, looking in the message history and adding more. What we could do is add some methods on the conversation because it is an empty conversation. But I think this is fine. I want to keep this nice and simple. But that little check should now let us have all of the introductions input correctly. Let's double check that. It broke. Alright, alright. Alright, Edward says, "Greetings, traveler. I'm Edward, the merchant who finds treasures among ashes. Care to trade in the shadow of fate?" Interesting. Where are we breaking? Here, interesting. Object reference not set to an instance of an object. So I assume it's complaining about this. It's possible that the like equality comparison of our person class is not set, so if we were to do like conversation history person equals blah blah and then immediately turn around and use this, the person object might not be comparing correctly. I don't know that that's it. What we're gonna do, let's go ahead and just dump a breakpoint in there, and let's put one here as well. We'll attach it to Unity. We'll make sure that this is running, and then we'll check in on what the database actually looks like. We are attached. Cool. Let's head on into town. It should dump us into our editor in a second. Cool. So we are indeed. Beatrice is our first conversation. So we should now have one conversation of Beatrice, and it should be an empty conversation. Cool. Oh, message history is null. Okay. So that we need to initialize as well. Because otherwise we can't call add on it, obviously. I wonder if we can just do this. Otherwise we can initialize it manually, but it'd be nicer to just have conversations ready wherever we use them. Let's go ahead and just see if that works. Otherwise we can do it manually. Any introductions? Cool. So now if we step down, conversation history for Hubert now has a initialized message history, count 0. It's no longer null. So that's exactly what we needed. So we will go ahead and take a look at all these introductions. We got Clement the Merchant. Oh, these are the quests. You want to go up to introductions. I'm Ralph. I'm Walthioff the Stonecutter. Cool. So it looks like they all have introductions in their conversation database ready to be shown to the player. Now let's also store their quest in the conversation database as well. And then we'll move over to UI and showing them correctly. Let's see here. So we looked at this earlier. We follow through. We say generate new NPC quest 4. That's where we generate our quest. When we have a quest, we say problem has been generated for. This is where we want to add it to the conversation database. And now it should be super simple of, instead of person.problem text, we just say conversation database dot instance dot add message, add queued message. We say for this person, assistant is coming from an NPC. That's just the label ChatGPT and other models use for user assistant differentiation. And then we have our text. Cool. So let's go ahead and let's just remove this altogether to find all the places that we are using it. And so we'll just go right into getting the UI hooked up to read from that database instead of reading from problem text. Stranger Manager and Person UI Manager are our two problem areas. So I guess we do have a check here of just making sure that a person has generated a quest at all. I think we can get rid of that because I'm not sure that we can get rid of that without re-architecting some other stuff. Because this is happening in the well, this doesn't happen until we get to town, so this should always fire. So they should already be generating a quest. So let's go ahead and let's comment this out and make sure that that's all fine later. That's just kind of every so often we get a tick that right now make sure everyone has quests, but later we will prompt the NPCs themselves and say like, hey, this is your current quest. It's been this amount of time. Do you have any new messages to send to the player, and so on. But I am noticing that there's also a potential in this new system that we've set up with the conversation database where if two things were to prompt them to generate a quest, they would have two messages to send, like one right after the other, and the player would get basically two quests. And there's not really a good way to grab the current quest when they give them an item. Because right now, if we go down the route that I'm thinking, we generate that introduction, we generate the quest. Right now you can't talk more to the NPC, so it does make sense that when you give them an item, you can just grab the most recent message from the conversation history and know that that is the current quest. But that isn't always going to be the case when we allow them to talk more with the NPC and like ask questions or just chat with them. we do need to be storing like the quest for that person somewhere. So this might be a little early for this sort of abstraction, but I'm going to go ahead and add also a quest database. And we'll just do a similar thing there of having basically just a dictionary that lets you say, give me the current quest text for this person. And then when we are creating this quest here, we are adding it to the conversation database, but we can also store it in the quest database as the current quest for that person. And then when you give them an item, we can pull from the quest database to say, here is the current quest, does this item solve it? Instead of trying to look through the conversation database and figuring out which one is actually the quest details. So what we will do is just make that super simple for now. We will make a quest database that's a singleton that persists across all scenes. And we will just give it a public dictionary person string even for active quest for person. Active quest for. And then what we can do here is we add that quest to the conversation database, and we also say quest database dot instance dot active quest for person. Let's actually just do an add person text. So then later we can say quest database. I don't know why I keep question databasing. We can say quest for person is just how we get that person's active quest. Cool. Let's go look through some more errors we got. Anywhere else we're using problem text, we got to switch out. So here, show conversation with. That is what we're going to be polling and saying, give me the next message to send. Let's come back to that. Let's get this stranger manager working. This is the logic for whether an item solves a quest. So here's exactly where we want, instead of just getting the problem text off this person object, we want to say quest database dot instance dot current active quest for the person the conversation is with. And similarly, we just do the same down here. It's just a chain. We get a yes, no of whether it's helpful or not up here, and then we use that in the next chained prompt to generate the text that they say and determine the rewards and stuff. So that should now pull the active quest description regardless of whether the player has continued talking to the NPC or not. So now we get to go to the fun part of, in our town simulator, this UI controller. I think we need to add a button here that lets you go to the next message. But let's first implement where we just show the next unread message. So it should just show the introduction messages, and then we'll add the button that'll say, okay, show me the next message, and then that should show the quest message. But we can at least use this current system with just getting the next message, which I guess is probably pretty easy. Grab the next unseen message from the conversation database for this person. Get next message to display for. Did we build that? We did. Okay. We pass back the chat message. The UI doesn't really need that. let's rename this to get next message content, and then let's say bool includes system messages, so we can customize that later. But with the renamed of get message content, let's pass back a string instead, just to make using this a little nicer. And then for that, we can just say content on both of those routes. So it skips sending user, assistant, system, whatever. Although we might need that in the UI eventually if we do show system messages, but maybe let's skip that setting. Let's always just assume that if we're displaying a message, it's from the assistant. I think that's simplest for now. So here, next message content just gets the next message and increments the index, so that is super easy. Here and here. We'll say display it. We've got this little branching here. Just if you first open the conversation, it does the typewriter effect, but if you leave and come back, you just get it instantly. There should be one more error, I think. Yeah. Here, write the full message. So that's if you click this message, you're skipping the typewriter effect. So, we don't have, if we call get next message content again, then it's going to go to the next message. So let's also add a public string get current message content. And we'll just do the same thing here, but not increment the index of what message we're on. So it'll get, well, that's also not going to work because when we show this next message, that's where we increment this, right? Wait, we're never even updating this. So that's a bug, but how do we want to do this? I think actually what we want to do is, we don't need this because it's not doing anything. What we can do is basically have this same branch here, but for next message content, we display that. And just have the index as 1 plus the current index. And then we will actually, when do we want to increment this? Probably when they dismiss the message that they're seeing from the NPC. So probably not in either case of getting the current message. So let's just add a quick little increment conversation index. We'll have this that we can trigger from the UI. And with that, we probably won't even need this get next message content to display for. What we'll do is just increment it and then get the current message. So then when you click speed through, you can just call get this current message again. And then when you finally click that dismiss button, that's when you'll increment it. So what we will do, instead of grabbing our problem text off the stranger manager, we can say off the conversation database, we can grab that current message for whoever the conversation is open with. And then the other, let's go back to where we had, where we were using get next message, and let's change that to use get current message. So here is where we want to instead get current message, but also since we're showing the conversation, and we don't even need to increment it there either. Let's just always default to the first message. So with our get current message, this will be -1. I think we want this to start to 0, and we call this index of next message to show to player. And I think just to make sure that things don't get too confusing, let's just comment this method out entirely and make sure that we rely on get current message, and then we'll use this for incrementing or decrementing if we want to go back and see the message history. Let's see. So this, we start out, index will be 0. There will be at least one message. We could have a little check here of like, if there are no messages yet, display nothing. But, I mean, we'll probably see that as an error if it happens. I would like to get to the point where that doesn't happen. So I want to be able to see that error instead of like handling it gracefully and showing a blank message or something. So let's keep this for now. Nice and error prone. But that should solve all of our compilation errors. If we go in here, we should now be able to open a conversation with all those NPCs and see their introductory message. We won't be able to see their quest yet. That's the button we'll add next to go to the next message in the conversation. But let's see if we get any NPCs show up. Hopefully we do. Alright, Reynold. We got Reynold the monk. He's introducing himself. Hopefully this is just an introduction and not his quest. This looks suspiciously like his quest because I haven't implemented rich text in the introduction yet. And I think the reason why this is happening is because, well, where are we calling our quest database again? Are we reading from that at all when we are... We use it when we submit an item, but I'm not sure why we're also getting results for conversation database. When I search quest database, I guess I make sure we close the previous results. Quest database. Okay. So why are we showing this person's quest? Index of, we're not incrementing it ever. Next message content should be get current message, which should be index of 0, first message history. So let's go ahead and let's debug that a little bit. See what we get. Alright, Osmond. Wait, are we not triggering that at all? Show conversation. Oh, okay. So that triggers when we click to see someone. So now we've got next message content. In our conversation database, we should have a bunch of conversation histories, and they should all have 2 messages. A little suspicious. Okay, this guy has 2. And the first one should be an introduction. Again, we don't have rich text in the introduction, so I think this is the quest. Wonder if it's a race condition. Is this the introduction? Yeah. I see what's happening. So we're triggering both the introduction and the quest to happen at the same time, and we're just adding them to the database whenever they're done. And the quest generation, which we've worked hard on getting to be fast, is happening faster. So it's the first message that we see. So what we should probably do is, instead of trying to rely on making sure we know who wins that race, we probably should just chain and wait for the introduction message to be done and then generate the quest. So let's do that. Where were we generating the introduction message? I have forgotten. So, this is our flow. When we are at a new location, we generate a bunch of professions. For each profession, we generate a person. Here's where we're generating the introduction for that person. Here's where we're generating the quest for that person. What we're going to do is just take this quest generation and tack it on the end of, at the end of where we've generated the introduction. So we know that this prompt always runs and completes first, and then when it's completed, we can go on to the next message generation, which is their quest. So let's make sure all that works. We should now see, when we talk to someone, it should have their introduction message instead of the quest message. So we got introductions happening. And now we're getting quests happening. But one thing I'm noticing is we're not showing the person until the quest is done generating, which I think is fine. But we'll move that logic a little bit. So we got Garnier, the Countess. Greetings, I am Garnier, the Countess. That's making me think it's going to be a quest. Huh. Okay, well let's go ahead and not generate quests. And then also, we have a show person at current location method, which is called from here, where we have generated a quest for them, but now we have a previous message to show. So we actually can do that earlier on. So now, as soon as they have an introduction, they can be shown at the location. We can go talk to them. They shouldn't have a quest be generating at all, now that we've commented that out. Let's just kind of bisect that problem and make sure it's happening where we think it is. So we should start seeing people here sooner. Alright, blacksmith. Philip, the blacksmith. Cool. We are getting an error. I'll check OpenAI status in a second. But cool, we have an introduction. Great. We've got Amy the miner, who keeps digging even when the ground shakes, because in Gerund we're all a bit stubborn like that. But it's interesting that if I go ahead and uncomment this out now, and I guess we don't need this check now that we've moved the logic into happening in the current town. If I generate this quest for them now, it's going to go through. Problem has been generated for. It will add this queued message. Is it adding it maybe to the beginning? No, it's adding it to the end of this list. Alright, so let's look at how we are showing this conversation. We get the next message content, get the current message content. Okay. I am going to go ahead and reattach that so we can see that this is correct. You've never met a stubborn Amy? Yeah, I haven't either, actually. All the Amys I've met are nice and open to changing their mind on everything. We got Felicia and Amicia. Let's check out Amicia the leather worker. We are kicked over to the editor. Next message content. Let's skip down a line so we see what that gets. That looks like an introduction to me. Okay. So let's continue. And let's go look at Felicia. Make sure that, let's just move our break point down a little bit. Make sure that next message content also is an introduction. Yeah, it is. Scoot it over here. And we'll continue. Let's just check one other person. Oh, I'm sure it's fine. Don't worry about it. Sounds about right to me. How very not stubborn of you to agree. Alright, so I think everything is working now. So the next thing that we need is that button that says, okay, we're done with this message. Give me the next message. So let's go add that. Let's head back to our town simulator. We'll just copy maybe this guy. It's a little weird to have the same icon, but it's all just temporary UI anyway. So let's put him down here and let's call him a next message button. Let's check out his components. So him, we'll create a function for him to call in our person UI manager of show next message for current conversation. So when that button is clicked, we'll call show next message for current conversation instead of speed through the typewriter. And then here what we can do is, I guess, stop any current typewriter effect that we have. So let's just grab that. We probably want to put this in a function now that we're reusing it so much. And then we can increment conversation index, which should do that, and then we can grab the next message and show it. And so that will set our speed up button active, I think. Type NPC message does set the speed up active button. So I think one little nicety that we can add is just say next message button. Set that before we forget. And then we can have that disabled by default and just show it when, oops, wrong one. Just show it when the message is complete as kind of an indicator of like, okay, this is the message. You can click this now to get to the next message. So type NPC message. At the end of that, we will say next message button dot set active true. In our show next message, we'll set that to false so you don't re-click it. I guess we might as well just set it to false here just in case there's any weirdness of we don't ever want it to show at the same time as the typewriter because they have the same icon. Let's go ahead and actually just let's take a look at what options we got. So instead of 2 arrows, let's just say sure, that white exit is fine by me. That looks so janky. Never mind, I hate it. Let's do this guy. Alright, so super janky button, but should work. Let's go ahead and make sure this all works by going in, looking at the introduction, clicking that button, and hopefully being greeted with a quest at that point. So we always got to go back to our start screen because we set up all our singletons in here, and they persist between scenes. We got to have them set up and ready to go. So let's make sure we're not still attached. And this person is a lava resistance material builder, so that sounds perfect. Elfrida. Alright, so as soon as the typewriter was done, this button disappeared, this button showed. If we click this button, will it take us to the next message? Perfect. So we do need to go edit the quest prompt and say don't introduce yourself, don't describe the location, blah blah blah. But yeah, we went from the introduction to the next message. Let's see what happens when we click it again. It should take us and show us this message again because there's nothing else to show. But we want to make sure that that is actually the case and it doesn't just break. It just broke. Alright, so here, let's just say, let's clamp to the conversation size so we don't exceed it. let's go customize our prompt. But it's looking good. We now have conversation histories. So we haven't yet summarized what happens when you give an NPC an item. We also haven't added their response to the conversation history when you give them an item and we generate a new response. We'll do that next after customizing this prompt. But maybe after that we can think about how we want to be generating the next prompt using these previous messages as part of the input, so we don't just get a completely random quest again. Let's go ahead though and say we have two different prompts for, let's make a quest directory for our quests now that we're getting a couple different types of prompts. And both of these we want to make sure that they don't introduce themselves, which we explicitly tell them to do. So we'll just customize that a little bit. You have already introduced yourself and described the location in a previous message, so you should just explain the problem you're having and why it's so bad for you specifically, using your professional personal details and trying to get some empathy. Your problem should be themed, blah blah blah. Okay, that looks good. Let's just do the same thing in the other prompt. Introducing your problem. Let's grab that full sentence. We can tweak all these another time. Just getting it working. Your introduction very short. We'll just remove that because there is no introduction. Cool. So those should be good to go. Forgot the other thing that I was going to do, but let's just go take a look at what the messages look like. We still need to shorten the quest prompt, like their output, a lot, but maybe this will help if they're not introducing themselves. Oh, so that's a quick bug to fix. If we click speed through NPC message typewriter, we never actually show the next message button. Or I think the item slot, right? Because we got to show the item submission slot when the message is done. Let's just make sure that that gets shown as well. And we'll go back in and refactor all this because there's a few states that the UI can be in, and we're just kind of duplicating that over and over again. But while we're still fiddling with the structure of everything, I think that's fine. And then when we figure out how we want things to look, we'll settle on how we want it to feel in the code. All right, Sabine. I'm Sabine, tending these stubborn crops till the mountain decides otherwise. Care to trade tails or turn soil? Next message. My fields are more ash than earth, which is a volcano. Cool. Yeah, that's fine. Finish that. If we click this, it should show the same message again. Cool, it does. If we click this, it should show this message, or this button down below. It does. And if we go look at someone else, Cool. Wonder why they're using orange. I guess they just picked up they can use other colors, but I could say don't use other colors, but I think it's fine. It's fine for now. Cool. Looks like it's all working. So we now have people who we can have a consistent conversation with them when we give them an item. That's what we'll do next, is get their response here added to the conversation history. But then when we have them come back for another quest, we can use that conversation history in the context of the prompt. So what's going on here? Active quest 4. Oh, we already haven't. Okay, so we'll fix that too. This is looking good. I'm going to take a quick bathroom break. I'll be right back. Just a couple minutes. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hope this is fun. Feel like we're getting a lot done, so it's nice. And I'm really excited. I'm really excited to get all this system stuff done so I can work more on the game side of things. I think it's going to be really cool to have these kind of meaningful quests and have some ideas of like, ooh, this might help or this might help, and then go out into the fields or go exploring to find the items that you think will be good for crafting those solutions. So that's kind of the loop we're going for. I will be right back. Hope you're still here when I'm back. We are back. So, things are looking good. We are going to add that remaining message, this message here, to the conversation database. And then we will go ahead and go tweak how quests are generated. We'll probably have another prompt of like, we'll change these to be generate a starting quest. And then we'll have a different prompt that is generate a ongoing quest based on this chat history. And we'll use that if it's not the first quest that you've done for this person. Yeah. And I think this game's pretty cool so far. I really like just kind of combining items and seeing what you're getting. So like black diamond and an axe. It's like, oh, what do you get when you make those? We just added last week some stats to items. It's kind of hard to see in the small window, but they can all have random stats now. If we want to add maybe flower and moss, and then put whatever that is onto the axe. You can kind of just craft whatever you want. So if you guys think that this is cool, or more interestingly, maybe if you have some other ideas of like things that you could do with these items other than give them to an NPC for a problem, I would love to hear it in the chat. There's so much stuff that we could do with this. It's kind of just experimenting with a lot of stuff and figuring out what's fun and then expanding those things. So we are in one of those expansion states right now, but we're getting closer and closer to it feeling a lot more polished. And then we'll be looking for new stuff to make after that. So let's go ahead and let's add the final message to our conversation database. So when we give an NPC an item, maybe we want to add that as a system message to the conversation, which will add a little bit more complexity in here where we want to like exclude system messages when we're getting them to show. But I think that'll be relevant to the context later of the conversation history. Will read like, here's my problem, system message of player gave them this item for the problem, and then their response, and then we can generate a new message for the next quest. But let's go ahead and say here, where we've submitted an item, we can go ahead and we kick off our prompt for does this item solve this quest, but we can also say conversation database dot instance dot add we can just use the same method and just say that it's a system method. We might want to fork that out later and have a separate message for adding system messages, but we will go ahead and say the player gave, let's use the formatting of like this, which might need to polish that up later if it starts using that formatting in its output messages. We will say open conversation is with dot name their item name, or what did we give them? Element name. We should rename that. Item to solve their problem. Okay. So now we have a system message that kind of just tracks a player action. So we can start incorporating those player actions in subsequent messages. Let's go ahead and rename this. We started out this game with like really basic elements like fire, water, earth, and you occasionally see element in the game, but we're updating those to be more consistent. Item display, cool. Item element. Wait, what was it before? Element name. Okay, this should actually be item name. Cool, so we've got that message in. Now when we get a yes or no, whether or not it's helpful or not. Actually, forgot the into square bracket here. When we get a yes or no back on whether it's helpful or not, we then fill out another prompt to generate their response. When we get their response, that's where we're going to also add that to the conversation database for that person. And we will just say assistant says it, and the response is text. And we do have friendship scores updating, so we don't need that anymore. Alrighty. So this should work now because we can go ahead and... We're going ahead and showing it anyway. Which I think is fine, because we can also just say conversation database.instance.increment the conversation. So we're generating it, adding it to the history, and also showing it immediately, so we just want to increment that. We mostly just want it in the history so we can use it for future quest generation. So there's not really anything to test here. We know that it'll add it, and they already are showing it. So this is looking all good. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at the two approaches that we can take now. We can start building the prompt for generating follow-up quests, or we can build a summarization prompt that takes in the full conversation history so far and summarizes it. So that would be their introduction, their problem, the item player gave, and their response. Actually, I think let's move this down, the system message of what item they gave, and let's go ahead and say, do we still have the item name in context here? We do. So let's include whether that item was successful or not. We will say expected, let's say the item was helpful, not helpful. Let's make it a little more forceful and say the item solved or did not solve the problem open conversations with .name was having. And then we'll just append that success message to the end over here. So you get something that's like, the player gave a potion of invisibility to solve the problem. The item did not solve the problem. Cool. So now, do we want to be summarizing that quite yet? Maybe not. But I mean, I think it isn't really necessary for the second quest specifically, but once you get to like third or fourth or fifth or sixth or whatever, then that conversation history is going to be so long, they will need to be summarized. So it might make sense from like a recursive standpoint to just, whenever you finish a quest, collapse the entire conversation history into a single summarized message. And then the next quest can use that summarized message so let's not build a summary yet, because we might lose some like data fidelity there. And if we want to build this sort of foundation for generating future quests, I want to have all the context that we can have in the meantime to make sure that we're building on all that when generating the next quest. And I think having more of that context will make it more obvious. So I'm going to say down at the end of handle the final interaction with this NPC for this quest. I was going to add this exact to-do. So we want to just add a quick to-do to summarize the entire conversation of this quest, result, rewards, etc. to keep in the NPC's memory for the next quest. So that's where we'll do the summarization. But let's go ahead and just work on some prompts that uses a full conversation history to generate the next quest. And I also want to think a little bit about how best to test this in a tight loop instead of going through generating a first quest, giving them an item, generating the response, and then generating the next quest. It'd be nice if we could hard code in some quests, but it might just be faster to do all the generations. But let's change these to generate starting easy quest or starting medium quest. And then we'll add a prompt for generate follow-up quest. So let's just take what we've got so far in a system message so we can grab what we need. And I will turn my mic around to my keyboard and type for a bit. Enjoy. Alright, things are looking good. I'm going to go ahead and put in some mock data here, and we'll see what the output's looking like. So we got Bob, blacksmith again. Let's go ahead and just grab the exact description once again, just to get as close to realistic data as we can. Let's format it like that. And then we will say conversation history, and we can choose how we want to format this, because we're basically going to be serializing it from our conversation history list. But if we say Bob, hi, I'm Bob, and I am the blacksmith here in town. I hate fish, so the river drying up is great, but my hands get too hot while working, and I don't have any water to cool them off with. Oh, I guess that's more of the quest, so it's the second message. So that's a good quest that they can give. Do you have anything that can help? And then we will say the player gave Bob their ice gloves item. It was helpful, or it solved the problem. And then we get one more message from Bob saying, thank you so much. Now I can work all day in this blistering heat without my hands being too hot. That's good enough. Okay, so given this context and this conversation history on GPT-4 Turbo, can we get a reasonable follow-up quest that incorporates ice gloves and is like higher stakes? That's what we're shooting for, is like a progression of quests. So every time you help him, it recursively says it's more and more important, bigger and bigger scale. So, we meet again. Since your last visit, the situation here in Jaren has become graver. The volcano began to spew not just ash, but molten lava. My forge has been buried under the ash, and with the protective magic of your ice gloves, I managed to survive, but we need to protect the whole village. Sadly, my skills lie in shaving metal, not conjuring barriers. We need something that can shield the entire village from the volcano's wrath. Could you find or create a type of enchanted barrier emitter? Okay, so a couple problems that we haven't solved yet. After we get these conversation histories working per NPC, that's when we're going to start making them searchable from other NPCs, so we can get more consistent state through all the conversations. So that's where we might either approach we might take. We might add some details here of like what has changed in the village. We'll probably be updating this message, this description of the town after like each quest completed. We can ask the AI like, hey, this has happened. The player has slayed a dragon. Please take the previous description and this new information and rewrite the description for a new description of the village. And we can use that to say like, oh, the volcano is now erupting, so now all the problems include that. Or we can take the opposite approach of, for example, we said nothing here about the volcano erupting, but he has now said that the volcano is erupting and the town is being engulfed in ash. So now that that has been now that that has been said, we can make that like canon for the world and use that in all the other NPCs quests from then on. So they will have that fact that Bob just created out of thin air that things are happening. So I feel like we want that first approach so we have a little more control and these NPCs aren't just making up stuff and then we have to regenerate new quests for everyone else based on a new like state of the village. So I think what happened is he raised the stakes too much. So maybe we can just tweak this a little bit to say increases the stakes, severity, and tension compared to the previous problem without affecting other NPCs in this location. So maybe that'll kind of temper like it is a bigger deal for him, but it's not like the volcano is erupting. So if we generate a new response now, now he says, welcome back. The ice gloves you gave to me work wonders, but now there's a bigger issue at hand. The heat from the volcano has escalated, making it impossible to keep the forge running without overheating the entire village. I fear the forge's flames might ignite as a disaster. I need something that can absorb or redirect this excessive heat away, ensuring the safety of our village and continuing my craft. That's perfect. That's something we can like craft him a obsidian battery or something. And it is like a threat to the village, but other villagers don't necessarily need to know that that is a threat. So if we have maybe Bob the well, this example is for a blacksmith specifically, but if we had like a fisherman, hopefully he's going to create something more specific to him instead of creating new canon for the whole town. Let's generate another one for the blacksmith and just kind of see the variants that we have going on. And then maybe we can quickly write something for like a chef or a fisherman or something. But this will happen after the previous quest is completed. We're generating a new quest of more severity. He says, adventurer, your help was invaluable. Yet as our luck and Jaren would have it, the volcano is showing signs of a massive eruption. My forge is covered in ash and the tools I'm to deliver to the town's defense are buried. Desperately need something to clear away the volcanic ash quickly without damaging the delicate metalwork. Can you find me an item to do this? So you can make him like a brush or a broom or a leaf blower. So all those will probably work. This again is a good, like the tension is rising, but it doesn't affect other NPCs. So I'd say that's good. Let's keep a copy of our conversation history. And I'll recreate a new one real fast just so we have a separate NPC profession to test with. If anyone wants to throw out a profession in the chat, happy to write one for that. Otherwise, I'll just do like a researcher or something. Alrighty, we got Bob the researcher. Hi, I am Bob and I am a researcher. Wow, imaginative. My job is to observe the heat as a fish, so I can't player gave Bob their river cooling generator. It solved the problem. Thank you so much. Now I can work. Now I can observe the patterns of fish in town even with the heat of the volcano. Alright, Bob. What quest do you have next after we've solved this silly fish are dying quest? Greetings once again. Since your last visit, the river cooling generator you gifted has worked wonders. However, a new problem arises. The nearby volcano's heat has intensified, affecting the river's ecosystem more than before. Now even the generator struggles to keep pace, threatening my studies in the fish I've grown to appreciate. To stabilize the river's temperature further, I require an item that embodies the essence of chill and resilience. Okay, so you could probably just generate him another generator or something. It's kind of a lame example, so you kind of get a lame output as well. Let's generate one more. Just kind of read through it and see if it's any good. So we got... It's working wonders. The situation has worsened. The heat is now affecting the soil's fertility, endangering our food supply. I need to balance my research with finding a solution to preserve the village's future. Could you craft an item that revitalizes the foil while keeping the temperature at bay? Okay, so that's fine. I think one last thing to test is if we have Bob the blacksmith and we gave him fire gloves, and it did not solve the problem. I appreciate the thought, but these gloves will probably make my hands even hotter. I don't know how that solves my problem, but good try. So if we weren't able to help them on the previous quest, and we're generating a follow-up quest to that, what's it look like? Oh, it's you again. Fire gloves you gave me, well, they've had an unexpected effect. My hammer, Ember Strike, now glows with an unnatural heat, making it impossible to work the metals without melting them outright. Jaren's needs grow, and without the ability to forge, I cannot supply the tools. Could you find an item that could cool my hammer down, yet allow me to continue foraging? So, for some reason, he's still using the fire gloves like a dummy. But it is cool that we've given him this item, and it has prompted a new quest, basically. And we weren't able to help him, so the stakes didn't really seem to go that much higher. But I think that's a good differential of stakes, because we want to have multiple quests leading up to something big. So I think having small incremental changes to the stakes is going to be the best way to do that, because eventually you'll get higher and higher and higher, and it's going to be like, oh yeah, the village is overrun by dragons and the volcano's erupting and this and that. So we want that slow burn, I think. We generated another one. Greetings again. It turns out the fire gloves didn't help, and now to make matters worse, the rumblings of the volcano are causing my tools and forge to overheat more than ever before. The heat is warping my materials. I'm in dire need of something that can cool things down or protect my work from the intense heat. Okay, so you basically get a second shot. Can you help me with an item imbued with chilling magic or something that can ward off fire? So if you aren't able to help him, it does seem like the next quest is similar and basically slightly tweaked, but gives you another shot to be able to help him, which is nice. Cool, so we can use this. So what we want to do is now, when we are generating a quest for an NPC, wherever we do that, generate quest for we want to check to see if we've previously generated a quest for them, and if so, use the follow-up quest prompt. Otherwise, we want to use one of our starter prompts. And if we use the follow-up prompt, we will need to do a little more serialization of passing in the conversation history. So we're going to kind of balloon this method out a little bit. Like we could split out this route for starter prompts and a separate one for the conversation history. But I think just for now, since we're moving fast, we'll balloon this out and see what we're keeping, what we're not, and then we'll refactor it later. But we need a way to see if this person has had previous quests, and I think that makes a lot of sense to stick in our quest database. So we can say public void or public bool previously generated quest. And so we can now say we probably also want to move our actively generating quests for list into the quest database just to kind of clean up our stranger manager, but we'll do that later. If previously so if we've already generated a quest for them, we want to generate follow-up quest. Otherwise, we want to generate a starter quest. And this is kind of the building blocks to our quest lines, because we'll start with the starter quest, but then the follow-up quests will repeatedly get more and more intense, hopefully. So all of this, I mean, we could just do, like, grab the items from the inventory. We could also serialize the conversation history, and just have it as a token in case the prompt needs it. Maybe we will do that, just so we don't need this block twice. The downside of that is if it gets to be expensive to serialize the conversation history or fetch items from the database or look up the current location, etc., we would be wasting that time if we don't have these tokens in the prompt. But that seems like something we should actually build into the prompt to make these more like lazy and just look in the prompt for the key, and if it is there, compute the value to insert in. So this will be fine. We'll go ahead and say prompt base is null, so we can get that scope there. We will move this up to our starter quest block. And then here we can say, they're currently stored in the person database. Let's move all of those over to the quest database. So let's grab this guy. I'm wondering if we even need the person database anymore, but we'll tackle one thing at a time. So we've got these prompts. We want to add one more public prompt generate follow-up problem. And so here we can now say generate the follow-up problem. These are now on the quest database. Prompt base. And how do we want to do this? Let's double check that we don't have any errors from moving that over. We don't, but we do need to set those references now. So we have follow-up quest. We have an easy quest, which is direct, and the medium is open-ended. And so now we want to also add serialized conversation history as a token we can use. So let's go ahead and say conversation history. And I don't know that we want to just use the JSON serialization directly. I think what we want to do is have a public string serialized, like a formatted and serialized version. Something like that. And then we can say conversation database dot instance blah 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 that, yes. So we'll build that in a second, but let's go ahead and add in our tokens to this follow-up prompt. So we now have name, we've got profession, location name, location type, description. And then here we can just say conversation history. And that's where we'll sub in our abridged conversation history that's been summarized, but for now we'll just use it all. So conversation history, cool. So we need to build that real fast, and let's grab the format from here. So we're working with like that. So we just want to say, we don't need to start with the header, but we can say string speaker tag is equal to message.role is equal to assistant. Well, I guess this is a three-way thing. Let's say speaker tag is equal to string.empty. Do a quick case or a switch, I guess. Case user. That case doesn't ever happen currently, but it's nice to have it in, I guess. And eventually we'll let the player like create their own character so they can give themselves a name and so on, because right now they're just going to be called adventurer or player or something. Let's actually put their name to adventurer for now. So for our assistant, the speaker tag is actually our NPC's name, which is we don't know from this position, actually. So maybe we could just have the role. But we'll keep it as assistant for now. And system is actually system, so yeah, maybe we will just use the role. So if we did something like this, I mean, I guess we can say like you, but I feel like we're gonna mess up the AI feel like they're really bad at following pronouns and switching points of view and tenses and stuff, so let's just keep the raw role for now. So it will look like assistant system user. We just want to make sure that their output doesn't like start with assistant : and then their text. But I guess we can just wait and see if that is a problem and add it to the prompt. Maybe we just preemptively say like, don't use quotation marks or speaker tags. And that should cover it. But this should serialize our conversation. We get role, message, role, message. We get the system messages. It's more like that. And then we return it. That gets inserted into the prompt. So theoretically, we should be able to have the full flow now, I think. So over here, we're generating the quest. We get the correct prompt base. Grab items from our inventory for that. Grab the conversation history. In the case that there is no conversation history, it's just going to return an empty string. That's fine. We are going to have an error here because we are adding to a key that already exists. So we'll fix that in a second, but I think it looks good. Let's just quickly head over to our quest database and add in a public void set quest for person string quest details, and then we can go ahead and do the check of if active quest for dot contains key that blah blah blah. Yeah, that check. So now instead of this, we will use set quest for person text. And so the first time that it sets their quest, it'll add to the dictionary, and then after that it'll override it. So we can always get the most up-to-date quest for a given person whenever we need it. And that quest conversation history will just keep growing. Maybe we should add just a quick little debug for conversation history so far. And that'll give us at least some output that we can kind of see where things are going. So let's go ahead and test that. We get to finally play the game a little bit. Assuming we don't get any errors. So we hop on in. Let's also just grab console window over here. Oh, we got an error already. Right, because that has not been initialized yet. We don't have a history. Well, we should have a history. Generate new NPC quest 4 happens at the end of generating our introduction, which should initialize that there. Let's take a quick look at this though. So in our conversation database, add queued message for conversation for this person. This we know ran first and didn't error, so it did go ahead and add conversation history of that person. What line was the error again? Conversation history of that person. guess it could have... that is indeed what's erring. Not present in the dictionary. Are we calling this from anywhere else? Location database? No. Stranger manager. This happens at the end of an NPC's interaction, so not yet. And then finally, reload people list for current location. That's interesting. Because that does get called at the start of this scene. And that's the only time it gets called? I feel like that should be more like when we add a person, we recall it to redraw it. But I think what we should do, let's just take this, the location name, let's set that up in the start, and then let's not call this, because all it's doing is clearing the list, which, yeah, I guess we should clear the list on the scene start in case we have stuff left over from the editor. We can leave it in that function even. But we don't need to generate the new NPC quests this way, because they should already be generating. This seems kind of left over from maybe trying to approach this a different way. So let's take that out. Let's make sure everything's working then. Because yeah, I guess if we are trying to generate those quests before we've started the introduction message, then it's going to error because we don't have a conversation history yet. So now we get no errors. We are getting NPCs. Awesome. So let's check out what Sybil wants. Purveyor of goods. We should add the profession to this view. Because they are a merchant, I see. Okay. What is your quest? You basically just need water. I mean, we can give you... Oh, we can't give you water. Okay. Is there water in the store, maybe? Probably not. You need water to... We can grab some water to forage. And then maybe some time. Can we do that? Can we maybe combine water and time to get more water? Okay, I don't think that'll help. But maybe. Let's give it to him. We gave him an well, yeah, let's give him an Elixir of Ages. Because we want to think through, like, we want to give them a really specific item so they reference it in their next quest. They did not like that. Holds wondrous properties but isn't helpful. Seems fine. So if we were to... I mean, it's generating in the background, so we should be able to click this and get the next quest. But let's go ahead and close that, so then when we have the next quest, it should show up in the list again for Sybil. Actually, is that what... Let's see here. So in our stranger manager, when we dismiss someone, we do generate a new quest for them. Okay. So are you ever going to generate a new quest? No? Okay. Well, that seems like a bug. but maybe we'll give an item to someone else. Unless this is for Sybil. No, I don't think it is. Alright, Edward. Or Frederick the Storyteller. Let's see what you need. Yes, yes, yes. Keeper of Tales. Tales I could spin were it not for this accursed ash that falls like snow, clogging my throat and silencing my stories. You need some spider silk, gourd, crystal, what else we got? My voice is as parched as the river. Okay, silkweed of crystal amulet. Let's throw a gourd on that bad boy. Amulet of harvest. Alright, probably not the direction we want to go. Let's do moss and a mud. And then combine that with a flower, maybe. We're getting something that might, like, soothe his throat. Unfinished potion. Let's get something soothing and we'll combine it with that to make it into a potion that we can give him. Blossoming Earth. That's probably going to give us something that's, like, more for plants. So, let's do some ash on that. Even though ash is the problem here. Blossoming Phoenix Earth. Alright, we're kind of headed, we're very much in that earthy direction. If we get maybe a stick, some grass, and a leaf. Grass. Let's do leaf and sand, maybe. Sandpaper leaf. Alright. Not quite what we wanted. Sunlight and that, sure. See what we got. An illuminated manuscript. Okay. Well, maybe... Okay, we don't have any researchers in town. Let's go back to him. We have a sniper rifle? How did I not see that? And where did we get that? That's not in the game. Do we have a crafting recipe for that? No, we don't. Okay. An empty bottle. Let's grab an apple and amber. Let's do the amber with the unfinished potion and pray we don't ruin it. An elixir of ages. We already had one of those. Alright. Sure, sure. Let's do some grass on that, I suppose. Okay. Maybe this will help, because if it's always springtime, it's going to be nice weather, right? So we give that to him. I guess it doesn't really matter what we give him, because the last guy erred and didn't come back, but maybe it was just a fluke. Alright, he likes it. He brought me the elixir of eternal spring. My tales and I rejoice, for with this potion not only will my voice be restored, but my spirit shall bloom anew, much like the greenest meadows in spring. Wow. Alright, alright. So, let's watch. Okay, looks like we did get a new quest. So he should be in the list again, but he's not. So, okay, so we are generating the next quest, but we're not re-adding him to the list. So, let's kind of trace through where we go. But this time, I just want to give Edward some stuff real fast. And let's see if, once we get the new quest, we can hit this next message button and we'll see his next quest. So let's watch the console for some color. Okay, yeah, keep going. Okay, he obviously didn't like that because I didn't even read what his problem was. But will we get another quest generated from him? Once again, I find myself in a deeper plight. Volcano has grown more restless. That sounds like it's coming from him. If we hit this to go to the next message. No, I'm getting the same message. Huh. Oh, now we... Okay. Little odd, but okay. We can work with that. We do have a new quest, which is cool. But one... we should have... Unless we just got the new quest? Yeah, I don't think so. We should have incremented the message index. Because when we click that button, it increments it and goes to the next message. I think what happened was... Well, I'm not sure what happened was. We'll figure that out. But at least we know these follow-up quests are generating. Is he in the list? Okay, he is not. Let's fix that bug. Looks like whatever... I know exactly what the bug is. Because we, in this function, used to show them in the NPC list when this new quest was generated. But we moved that over to when we generate the introduction for them. Wherever that was. Here. Show person at current location. So I think this already handles if we call it, yeah, if they're already at their location. So we can go ahead and safely move that back to the end result of generating a new NPC quest. So problem has been generated for. And let's move these guys up here a little bit. So now we generate the introduction, we show them in town. Now we're also generating the quest. So if we dismiss them, which removes them from town, remove person from location, and then we trigger generate a new quest. So that end of that chain is what will add them back to the town when they have something new to say. So that should solve that. I do think we should test that again because there is something wonky with the message index that we're using to score or store where we are in the conversation. So let's take a quick look at Galliena. Cool. Forging beauty from the ash itself. What was your... Oh, you're a potter. Okay. My pots and urns end up brittle and unusable. Need a substance that can repel the ash. Yeah. What's new? Aluminum, maybe? Let's just give you some aluminum. Sure. Let's grab all these while we're waiting. Alright, they love the aluminum. You can probably coat stuff with it and protect it from the ash. So, in the background, we have now removed her from the town display of people, and we have generated a new quest. So hopefully with that new quest generated, it should have re-added her to the end. And we helped her last time, so we have a friendship score. That is something we never fixed. We should go fix that real fast. But, one, we need a space here. Let's go ahead and do that real fast. What's the player gave? It's a good way to find that. Well, the player gave so confused why the search is the way that it is. I get so many things that are not what I'm searching. But we need this space. There. And also in our conversation database, when we call get current message to display for, we need to make sure that this message here is not a system message, and if it is, we should increment the index and call this again to try again. So let's say Chrome LLM dot chat message, next message, if message is system, then we want to, well, let's do the opposite and say that if it's not system, otherwise return get current message person after incrementing that. And that'll loop forever if it ends in a system message. So we also want to say only do that if there are messages after this system message. Because otherwise we need to show the previous message. So basically, if the index plus 1 is less than the count, seems fine-ish. Well, it might be an off by 1 error. We'll figure that out the hard way. If there's more messages, then we can skip ahead. We don't need to do that. We can just go ahead and call it, because it'll do all this check again. And if there are not new messages, then we want to if there are not new yeah, I guess it's a little bit wonky. It's not quite straight recursion because we are storing this index in the state instead of using it as a parameter here, so we can't just say like call it with index -1. But, I mean, what's going to happen if we decrement it, it's going to show the previous message, and then next time we call get current message, it'll be back to the system message, so it'll either go forward or back again. So I think that's fine. Go show the previous message again. So we will add a quick little decrement conversation index. And clamp to 0. This, I don't think we want it. I mean, it's possible that we will call it and that would have solved an error, but I'd rather see the error while we're developing. So we can decrement it now. So what we'll want to do is decrement it for that person and then call this again with that decremented value. There's probably, I mean, if you have an array of just 3 system messages, or even just 1 system message, what's going to happen is it's going to decrement to the first message, which is a system message, get clamped to 0, call itself, and then do the same thing over and over again, and it'll be an infinite loop. So we probably do want to check to make sure that the entire conversation history isn't nothing but system messages. But We can do that another time. Let's just say, hi future me. If you're wondering why this is an infinite loop, it's because the conversation history is nothing but system messages, and we keep calling this to find new messages that aren't system messages and getting clamped to the ends of the list instead of erroring out. Smiley face. Perfect. Quality code right there. Everything we could hope and dream for. So that should be good. I forgot it all. I forgot what we were... Oh, okay. We just don't want to show the system messages. Alright. So it's probably fixed. Let's go find out. What could go wrong? While we're here, I'm gonna see what this font ends up being, because I want to avoid rescaling, but let me do that real fast. So this ends up scaling to about 24 font size. We'll remember that and go update that. So, Bertram, what do you need? You are Bertram. I am familiar. Let's move this guy down yonder. Okay. So, right, gotta see next message. We don't really need this console up. I just want to be able to see if we have errors at all. So, we'll put them nice over there. Greetings once again. I mean, I guess that's fine. They already introduced themselves and now the player's talking to them again. Thinking of this from the perspective of like walking around in a 3D town and talking to an NPC and then talking to them again. Recent eruptions have covered my observational tools in ash, rendered them nearly useful. Very similar quests to start for a lot of these people. They need an item capable of cleaning or replacing vital tools. So, just take all these real fast. Let's see what we've got. We got flour and grass. We got moss. Mix flour and grass and then throw maybe a needle and thread at it. Healing herb. That seems like it'll help someone else. An unfinished potion as well. So let's do sand and pebble to get like gravel probably. Glass shard. Sure. Maybe with some spider silk. We'll see what we get. Just crafting something like specific. Silk bound shard. A gleaming fragment of grass delicately wrapped in resilient spider silk. Okay, let's put that on a stick. Probably get like a wand or something. Silk thread staff. Okay. Capable of casting spells. Sure. Let's see. What do we got? Water carrier. We don't really have much. Let's see what the leather worker wants. Okay, the leather I've been working on has become unbearably dry and brittle. Ash and heat are too much for the leather. It's cracking. Can you find me a moisturizing agent? Sure. How about some mud? Actually, you know what? How about some... water and mud? Quicksand? Probably not what we want. I feel like those were the two items that would probably help him. Let's do some dirt on that. Oh, I guess we do still have moss. Moss is probably good. Yeah, let's put moss in an empty bottle. See what we get there. Bottle of moss. Potion of minor regeneration. Alright. Unfinished potion and a leaf. Potion of Nature's Embrace. Heals not just the body, calms the spirit. I feel like maybe we done goofed. We probably should have just given them an item instead of trying to get real specific. But, you know, that's fine. In the real game, we just collect more water or something. But let's go ahead and give him the Potion of Nature's Embrace. Let's see what he says about that. Okay, he did not like him. We need to fix that little tooltip not showing up in the right spot. Looks truly wonderful for calming wounds, or calming spirits and healing wounds, but doesn't make his leather more wet. So we can go ahead and I guess we can, let's just stick to the normal route. We close him, we wait for Gundria to come back. Okay, so they are referencing how we solved the previous quest. Wait, no, this is just the end message. So we probably actually, what needs to happen after we end up showing the full message, that's probably when we want to increment what message we've seen in the conversation. So I'm imagining this. If we click this button, it previously would have shown us our system message. Now it should show us the next quest with our fix that we just put in. Situation has worsened since we last spoke. Okay, great. But yeah, when we dismiss the NPC, we should also increment that index into what message we've seen in the conversation. Okay, so a fierce ash storm has obliterated his remaining leather supplies. Marred the village of skiers. Need a solution that can protect leather from the ash storms and restore some of what was lost. Alright, let's build. So we have leather. Let's put a healing herb and leather together. Get some better kind of leather. Restorative leather pouch. Sure. I bet that will help. They can put their leather in it, it'll restore their leather. Hopefully that helps. Didn't get any errors, but it's taken quite some time. I mean, we haven't really tested much of quote-unquote Quest 3. I wonder if something in the callbacks for when you drag an item in isn't being reset. But we do have a bug to fix. Let's go ahead and when you dismiss the NPC, we will go ahead and increment that conversation index. So dismissed. Good spot for that is probably around here. We say conversation database instance.decrement. So that'll mean next time we open up the conversation, it'll be on the next message to show. Cool, so that should be fixed. I want to take a quick look at the callback for when we drag in an item. And the other thing I want to add in is that 24-point font by default on the NPC list. So here, just so we're not scaling it down, Let's default that to 24. It's fine. Okay. Quick fix there. We put the conversation panel back, and I think item submission slot. In our item display controller, checks to see if we've dragged an item into the item submission slot here, item drop-off panel, and I wonder if that's not triggering. Is there anything here that's like disabling it? Accepting item submissions, I bet, that should have put the item back if that were the case. But let's go ahead and just add some debug statements for next time we play through. Dropping off item. I see that's still called element name apparently. Where we got? Oh, okay. Let's just rename that item name. All right, so when we drop it off in the drop-off panel, we'll say we were accepting submissions if we are, and not accepting submissions. I'm pretty sure we are accepting submissions, so let's go ahead and go down that route. Here is where we trigger that generative prompt, which we didn't see triggered. So maybe we are not accepting it. Let's... Oh, I wonder if keeper... Nope, it's off. Okay. Let's see where all we update this. So we default it to false. When we get the message after giving them a item, we disable accepting item submissions. We also disable it when we show the list of people versus a single person's conversation, but we enable it whenever we show that conversation. So there's a case where we show the conversation, it enables it, we give them an item, they get a message back which disables it, and then we click the new debug button that we added to progress to the next quest, and then it's disabled because it's not re-enabled whenever we show that conversation again. So let's how do we want to do that? Because we don't know whether a message particularly or specifically wants to enable accepting item submissions or not. Maybe we should just always leave it on. Like, you could just give NPCs items, I guess. We want to add those items to their inventory. Let's see here. How do we want to do this? Let's take a look at show next message for current conversation. Let's just turn this, or whatever service it came from, stranger manager. Let's re-enable it whenever we show the next message. This is more a stopgap for now anyway, because you're going to be showing that conversation again whenever you talk to the NPC when it's a real NPC in the world. So let's keep that accepting on. Let's go through let's just play it again. Let's get to the third quest and oh, we can't start from this scene. Or else 1,000 errors. All right. So we head on in here. Let's find an NPC. Let's make some super specific thing. Give him a volcanologist. Fresh-faced Angeran. I'm Emmeline. Cool, cool, cool. Next message. Don't need to introduce yourself again, but I guess that's fine. My plight is grave. She needs precise monitoring tools. Well, you're going to get mud. Okay, so we will... that was wrong. So when we click the Person UI Manager's fast forward button, speed through NPC message typewriter, it's pulling get current message. I think whenever we click the next message button, that's when we want to increment. Show next message. We're not incrementing here, are we? Oh, we are. Huh. Fast forward. Okay, we'll take a look at that in a minute, but let's keep going. Next message. This is what we should have seen. Maybe we missed an increment when we... No. When we first clicked it, it would have incremented it too. That item obviously doesn't work. Hopefully we have another quest by now, but I do see we have errors. Oh, it's just for a location generated. We can ignore that. Thank you for returning. Hope you're well. Unfortunately, the situation has worsened. Tremors have increased, but we've also seen signs of toxic gases. Okay. We're in a spider silicon bottle. Silk-bound flask. Okay, cool, cool, cool. Let's put a flower on that bad boy. I'm in dire need of an item capable of revealing or neutralizing toxic gases. How about an elixir of blossom? Okay, so... I should have checked the console before, but apparently it's working now. I only added debug statements. So that means it's the worst kind of bug of only happening sometimes, because we didn't add anything to fix it. Alright. Okay, what happens in the next quest? Okay, I know what's happening. We increment the message when we fast forward, but we don't increment the message when we just let it autoplay through the whole typewriter. I think. But the toxic gases have started affecting the volcano's wildlife. Okay, so it's increasing the severity and building on the previous quest of toxic gases. We weren't able to solve them, now they're affecting wildlife more. That's cool. Okay. So I think there's just some weird UI bugs here of like our index into the conversation database. But I think the system that we set out to build, having a conversation history at all, which we didn't at the beginning of the stream, but also using that conversation history to prompt into follow-up quests so we can build more quest lines, seems to be working. So that's cool. If we can help people, then it looks like they make new problems based on like that blacksmith ice gloves aren't enough anymore, so you need more and more and more. Or if you can't help them, it looks like they get worse if the problem is not solved. So that's really cool. I think maybe we'll wrap up the stream real soon. But I'll just say, like, this is a really fun project to work on. This is kind of a town simulator scene right now, so we can just hammer out all these systems because we have much bigger plans for this game. I guess I closed the project earlier, but the goal for this game is to put you in a 3D world, and you have this, I think, crazy cool crafting system where you can just build whatever items you want. You can build equipment with stats, and you can travel from world to world or location to location. It generates new NPCs, and you can just kind of explore and see what happens when you're combining these items and so on, or other items. You got candied fruit and salt water. Sure, maybe you mix those up and see what you get. And you've got all these people that have their own personalities and problems that you can solve over time. You've got a whole recipe book that you're generating the whole time you're playing, so I mean, it's all random at the beginning, but once you know how to make fertile soil, now if you need a bunch of fertile soil, you go out and collect a bunch of dirt, you collect a bunch of moss, you make a bunch of fertile soil. So you're basically generating this world as you go, and it becomes more static as you're within it, as you're exploring more within it. So that's really cool, and I can't wait to build more of this 3D world. I'm going to polish up some of these like UI bugs off stream, and then I'll put a new build up on itch.io as a nice reminder of that. If you guys want to play this, we have it up on itch.io for free right now. Once we get the 3D world in, we're probably going to move towards Steam because I don't know how well it'll play in a browser. But you can head on over to chromagolem.itch.io, check out Elixir Emporium. We've got other fun demos as well that we've worked on previous streams. We've got a typing game. Doesn't really have a lot of AI, but it's kind of a fun little RTS style. Bunch of units spawn and you have to type the words above them to destroy them. We've also got You Are Not Alice, where you play as a hacker and you've taken over Alice's computer and need to convince her coworkers to run some viruses so you can take over their computers as well and talk to their coworkers and so on. And we got a little beat 'em up where you beat people up and then police show up and you have to convince them you're innocent. So a lot of fun little prototypes for AI, and Elixir Emporium's getting bigger than all of them, so we're really excited to keep working on it, and we're excited to have you guys with us on stream. One last shout out, if you are interested in game development or AI at all, we also have a Discord server, so you can head on down to the links in the description for this stream, or if you're watching this on YouTube later, you can just click Discord here. It'll dump you over to our server, and we got a bunch of people in here. Oh, hi. We got a new person. So we'd love to have you here as well. We're trying to grow, trying to have some more developers, some more people that are just interested in games or new kinds of games. I think we're making some really cool stuff. So thanks for following along. I will see you guys on Discord. Thank you.